What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We're going position by position, getting ready for the season. This is no longer just passing the time in June, early July. We are gearing up for real football. Yesterday, we talked about the quarterback position, a quarterback position that has been restocked. Running back, same deal. Premier player added from the Pac-12, but you also have some homegrown talents that are exciting, which we'll talk about. We'll dive into the depth, the players, the stats, the future, everything. We'll dive deep into that position. First, I want to talk about some folks that are always consistent. That is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life. Anijar and Levine. Pete, hop in. Excited to talk about this position right here, the running back position. This is, of course, a premier spot at the University of Miami. Miami's produced better running backs than any school in the country. I don't care what you say. We went through the top running backs in the program history list a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about Otis Anderson, Chuck Foreman, looked at their stats and their highlights, kind of were blown away by what those guys did. Of course, Edgar and James, Clint Portis, McGahee, on and on. Had a little moment with Lamar Miller, who was a good NFL back. Had Duke Johnson, who was an amazing college back, set records. But it's gone from, the best ever to, solid NFL with your Travis Homers, your DJ Dallases, to now a point where it's not where it needs to be. Can we get back on track here, Pete?
Well, they're off to a good start with Damien Martinez, which obviously coming over from Oregon State, but just talking to people that I trust in the NFL, obviously having been an agent, top 3-4 round type talent heading into the season, that's had a couple really good years, obviously 1,000-yard seasons at Oregon State. I think people are automatically saying, oh, he's coming to Miami behind a great offensive line, he's going to up those numbers. Oregon State had a very good offensive line over there. So I do want to point that out, not to take anything away from him, but I think people are automatically saying, wow, he's going to come to Miami, he's going to run for 1,500 yards now. I think with the depth of this backfield, D, you're probably going to see his carries, drop a little bit. But again, having talked to some people, I mentioned a few podcasts ago, talked to Jonathan Taylor with the Colts, one of the top running backs in the NFL. Has had a chance to work out with him and Frank Gore, senior and junior, heading into as Martinez was leading up to his enrollment in Miami. And Jonathan Taylor was absolutely blown away by Martinez. Says he's a top 3 round guy. And quite frankly, what his words was, I don't think there's too many ACC defenders who are going to be willing to tackle this guy.
Yes.
Right? So that's, you talk about NFL talent and can they get back there? You're on the right track right there with Martinez, who I think everyone understands from the outside looking in. He's a guy who wants to be here for a year and head to the next level if everything goes the way that it could. 6 foot, 238 pounds. I was told when he came on his visit that the second he stepped out of his van or whatever they did to take him from the airport to where the coaches were, everybody just looked at each other like, we got to get this guy. Just unbelievable physical specimen. What jumps out to me, Pete, is, we saw this in the NBA draft, certainly saw this in the MLB draft. Age is a big topic. People like to talk about, what's your age when you get drafted, because that analytically tends to show your future production and upside, because, not all sophomores, not all seniors, not all draft entries are the same in terms of where they are, their physical development, their age. This is a kid, look at his age, 18 years old, ran for almost 1,000 yards in the Pac-12. Last year, 19 years old, runs for about 1,100 yards in the Pac-12. He's coming here as a true 20-year-old with this kind of size. So I think that is one thing that jumps out to me. Another thing that jumps out, the explosiveness. And you don't usually think, when you're watching these clips here and you see the power and everything else, you don't usually think about a 238-pound back, almost a 240-pound back as explosive as a first kind of point. But when you look at the Miami Hurricanes, and now I'm kind of going backwards here, you had Henry Parrish, 625 yards, 6.3 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns. Don Chaney, 478 yards, 5.1 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. This was a team that was 28th in the nation in rushing efficiency, meaning yards per carry, the Miami Hurricanes, right? A lot says about the offensive line with that stat. But when you peel it back, in terms of yards of 10-plus yards or more, 59th Miami Hurricanes. 20-plus yard carries,
40th, 30-plus yard carries, 67th, 40-plus yard carries, 97th, and one of those 2 carries was from Brashard Smith. So it's this incredible dichotomy where you are the 20th team in the nation in terms of rushing yards per carry, but you're not making chunk plays last year. Lies do, I think, with Henry Parrish, Don Chaney just not being those dynamic players, despite having an offensive line that got him to the second level untouched. Flip to Damien Martinez, 6.1 yards per carry. But look at this, 14th in the nation in 10-plus yard runs, 39. Go to 40-plus yard runs, 17th in the nation with 4. That's twice as many as Miami had as an entire team. So, yes, he has size. Yes, he is going to punish ACC defenses and be impossible to tackle in the fourth quarter. Yes, he's physical. You saw the highlight of him running over Mish Powell, his new teammate, back when Mish Powell was at Washington. Now Miami's starting free safety. But the explosiveness is underrated, and he is going to have wide open running lanes with this offensive line if the offensive line is anything like it was last year.
And D, not to just jump back to what I was talking about with the Jonathan Taylor conversation, but that was one of the things he was telling me was that, especially in the short area drills, he said, man, I saw this guy come in here the first day he was weighing 235, lost about 10 pounds in the process. So I don't know what he was playing at last year, but he said, I was blown away at his quicks and his agility at that size, that his movement skills, right? So that, kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying there. And if he gets to that second level untouched, like we keep saying, his physicality, his toughness, his downhill running style kind of leads me to believe he's going to have a lot of 15 to 20 yard runs and more than that. So,
and I'll say this, Mario Cristobal, since he's been a head coach, has always been known for his powerful running games. Certainly that was the case at Oregon. That was the case at Miami last year when you look at the efficiency per carry. This, to me, is by far the best back that Mario Cristobal has ever had. I mean, go through the stats. CJ Verdell had 2,000-yard seasons, and then another one was the 2020 season, cut short. Very productive. Travis Dye, 1,000-yard season at Oregon. These guys didn't get drafted. They weren't talented guys to the level of a Damien Martinez. This is somebody who, like you said, potential day 2 pick. So you're taking – Mario's always done well with tough running backs with great offensive lines. Still have a great offensive line, still have a tough running back, but you're bigger, faster, stronger, and better. And that is what Mario Cristobal's banking on. And by the way, Damien Martinez isn't coming here just for the sun. He could have had money at Oregon State. He could have kept putting up big numbers. He could have gotten, less carries, less pressure as part of his deal. Really could have kind of ran his own show and said, I want to go pro. These are my conditions, and gotten whatever he wanted. He had Oregon State over a barrel. If his only goal is going to the pros, he could have gotten anything he wanted at Oregon State. Damien Martinez chose to come to the Miami Hurricanes because he wants to be a first-round pick, because he wants to be a Heisman candidate, and because he wants to be the best running back in the nation. And he knows that this offense and this offensive line gives him a chance to do that.
And he's only the tip of the iceberg, D, because you have what I believe is a complete group behind him. And really got to start with Mark Fletcher, who obviously is continuing to come back from this foot injury that he suffered in the bowl game, but very impressive freshman year for him out of American Heritage, of course.
Fletcher guy, I've loved him since I've seen him in American Heritage because his size is hard to really understand until you see him in person. This guy he looks like a defensive end. He is naturally big. Some guys you see and they're pumped up bodybuilder types, or they're just, overstuffed, let's say. This guy is a lean 240 pounds, 235 pounds, tall, big bone, big hands, long arms. Everything about him he's like Derrick Henry. He is a Derrick Henry type frame. I don't know if he's that big, but he's in that family. And he's tough and he's smart. I saw him at American Heritage block just as happily as he was running over teams. Plus, he can catch. He catches the ball with his hands. Saw him as a freshman last year. Won you the Virginia game with tough running. Had many, many moments, especially later in the season, where he sort of took over and announced himself as one of the best backs in the ACC. Dealt with injuries, of course, the big injury against Rutgers. It looked like an Achilles when you saw it on TV. I was kind of ruined that day, more so than even the loss. But ultimately, turns out it's not an Achilles, foot injury. So I think with Fletcher and a foot injury, be careful. You don't want to rush back with that particular type of injury. It can linger. It just needs rest. When you have a Damien Martinez, you can allow Fletcher to come back, rest his legs. And if you get a fresh Mark Fletcher coming out of the bullpen with Damien Martinez already rolling, this could be a scary sight come November, December, January. Similar to what you saw with Alabama all those years, with Georgia. It's waves of big guys that can punish you. That's what these two guys bring to the table.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk about some of the speed that's also in this backfield, D, but you took that thought right out of my head there. It's like you usually look for the thunder and lightning combo. That's the classic, scat back and power back. That's always the classic combo there. But if you can, once that defense is worn down, you throw another big back out there that, I don't see why he can't be the same sort of talent that Damien Martinez has shown in his first 2 years, right? He was splitting carries last year. Obviously Fletcher was, but if he had the same amount of carries that Martinez did, his numbers would have been, right there with him. Right. So I think you're talking about with those two, a real presence that can kind of take the soul out of defenses, right? There's going to be these games that, Miami may not have their best stuff in terms of throwing the ball around the yard, and for whatever reason, Cam may be a little off. There maybe missing some guys on the outside with injury, but if you can lean on that power run game, it can make some of these games, very easy.
And the passing game too. We didn't even talk about Cam Ward, how he figures into all this. So Damien Martinez, let's just talk about him again. His quarterback last year, DJU, it wasn't Cam Ward. It was really Damien Martinez carrying that offense because his quarterback, as we'll find out when we play FSU this year, was limited. Very limited what he could do. Martinez allowed DJU to have his play action game and do the things that he does well because of Damien Martinez. He didn't make Damien Martinez's life easier. Damien Martinez was the star of the show. Ward, you got a game plan for Ward and these receivers, which allows Damien Martinez maybe to have some light boxes. Maybe he sees some cover two where he's able to really punish guys and have opportunities to get into that secondary and run over some dudes as opposed to dealing with a ton of traffic up front because, again, everybody was geared to stop him. Fletcher, similar story last year. He didn't have a great passing game to take some pressure off of him. It had moments, certainly, but by the time that Fletcher started getting more carries, the passing game was kind of going in the wrong direction. So you haven't seen those two guys, which is a fully operational passing offense, especially not one after the other. Another thing with the size, Pete, the reason that a lot of times smaller backs don't get on the field isn't just because, they can't run between the tackles. I've heard when maybe younger, faster backs don't get on the field, I've heard fans say, these guys are stuck in the Stone Age. Why aren't you playing these faster backs? They're still stuck in the 1970s. It's not all about the run game. There's a passing game element as well, particularly pass protection. And when you play smaller backs, they can get overpowered very easily by blitzing linebackers, by defensive linemen, certainly. And they just do not have, forget holding up, just the first second of resistance that allows the quarterback to get the ball off. They're flying into the quarterback going backwards. You run into a Mark Fletcher, you run into a Damien Martinez, that's a 235 plus pound back with toughness. And if coached properly, they will deliver that first strike and be aggressive and make you think twice about getting after those guys because they can stonewall you and allow Cam Ward to make a big play. So that's another factor that those two guys bring to the table.
So keeping it moving here, D, a few more guys that we have to get to. I'll start with A.J. Allen, a guy that I think kind of gets lost in the mix here when fans talk about the backfield for the upcoming season. Obviously, everyone's excited about Martinez coming in. Fletcher had a great freshman year, is the local guy. But A.J. Allen came over from Nebraska, showed some good things in his time at Nebraska, had some moments last year, not really one of the highlight plays of the season with that touchdown run with the hurdle against Virginia, had a nice long touchdown run, 30, 40 yards in the season-ending game against Boston College, but showed good wiggle, good burst when he got his opportunity, and a guy who now at this point has played a good amount of football in his career.
Yeah, and you're right. He came on the scene in Nebraska, was sort of the star of the Big Ten as far as a young back for a couple of weeks, got hurt against Oklahoma, comes over here. You mentioned the hurdle, makes some plays. He dealt with some injury. I don't think we've seen the best of A.J. Allen, but still, if you look at the numbers, 361 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns, played really well in that Clemson game when Miami pounded it through and finished that one. So he was efficient. I think there's more there, especially when he's more of a relief role, change of pace. He's not as big as Fletcher and Martinez. He's not as fast as Chris Johnson, who we'll talk about, but he is explosive. He's a Louisiana back. Those guys that just have a natural instinct for the game. He can make things happen. He hits it hard. He has some fast twitch to him. Excited to see what he brings to the table, fully healthy. We didn't see him in spring, so he should have some fresh legs. Here you see him. I mean, the guy has some ability, and I think in a role where he is more of a change of pace, he can give you some big plays and win you big games like he helped to do against Clemson.
Yeah, and I think, look, some of these guys that we're going to talk about here, Chris Johnson and Jordan Lyle, the freshman from St. Thomas Aquinas, might have, a bigger ceiling down the line. But again, you talked about it. He's had very good moments against Clemson, Virginia, and these are ACC teams. Obviously, Clemson's Clemson, right? So we're not talking about a guy who can't get the job done and be a nice part of this rotation for Miami.
Yeah, and by the way, Nebraska, I mentioned that he was really turning some heads before he got hurt. 5.8 yards a carry when he got hurt. So this was somebody, again, who had demonstrated some bursts and had Nebraska people excited, talking about him being a next level type player. Again, not the size and speed of this is Miami. You're used to the Edgar Jameses, the Willis McGahees, Damien Martinez to a lesser extent. I don't think you're going to see that with A.J. Allen, but he could be, to me, very similar to what Mario was running for 1,000 yards with at Oregon. Yeah. With the Verdells, with the Travis Dyes, tough guys that hit the hole hard, not a lot of fanciness, just, straight ahead, taking the yards that are there and then breaking big runs when they're available.
Next guy here, Chris Johnson. Seems like he's been someone that Canes fans have been excited about for a year plus now. Obviously a speedster out of Dillard here. And I know you'll run through his track times and what he could bring to the table. Had that touchdown run against Bethune last year, and you saw the ability and the easy running ability, I should say, the gliding motion that he brings to the table. So a guy that, again, hasn't shown much at Miami just yet, but year in the weight room, understanding the explosive big play ability he could bring out of the backfield now. How excited are you about Chris Johnson Jr.?
Probably more excited than most. Maybe even people inside the building. There's some questions, not so much about from the coaching staff, but guys that go to practice, right? The boosters, the former players and stuff like that. People said, oh, well, he bounces everything outside, all this and that. I think when he gets in a game and gets a wide open lane, which we talked about, Miami gave those lanes to John Chaney and to Henry Parrish. He has a chance to turn that 5 yards of green grass into a 70-yard touchdown in a way those guys didn't. He will maximize those opportunities. Does he bounce too many runs outside? Yes. Is he going to miss holes that are there? Yes. He is still developing as a running back. He took a huge leap from his junior year at Dillard, where he was really more of a track guy, to his senior season where he was dominating Chaminade, dominating Central, putting up huge numbers. So I think this is part of the progression. Last year showed some flashes, very limited carries. But now this year, I think there's just going to be a game. Maybe it's the first game. Maybe it's the sixth game. There's going to be a time where this guy breaks one open and it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. Just some numbers on him.
If he looks anything like this, like he looks in the college football video game, man, then he might win the Heisman. I don't know.
Well, he's like a social media sensation, right, Pete? You're more in tune with this than me.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of people, tweet about him, and I mean, he's like the fourth-string running back in the game. But you get 98 speed, 98 acceleration, then people are gonna find out about you.
Yeah, and look, salute to EA Sports for doing their homework. There's a reason why he's 98 speed, 98 acceleration. I'll use a comparison. His name is Chris Johnson Jr. He's always compared to Chris Johnson, the running back for the Tennessee Titans, CJ2K. No relation. It's really just an amazing coincidence. But CJ2K went to Olympia High School in Orlando before going to East Carolina. Similar size. The comparisons are easy to make. But look at this. Our Chris Johnson Jr., number 24 for the Miami Hurricanes, 10.25 in the 100 meters, personal best, 20.40 in the 200 meters. These are high school times. He won the state championship in both categories in the state of Florida. If you look at CJ2K, probably the fastest running back in the history of the NFL, or one of them when he got in there, ran for 2,000 yards based on his speed. 10.38 in the 100 meters, 21.30 in the 200 meters. Still ridiculously fast on the track. But if you take his times from Orlando, I mean, apples to apples, he's running on some of these same tracks. Chris Johnson, a clear notch ahead speed-wise. Now, of course, running back is more than just speed. But I have a theory that some of these super, super fast backs, it comes together later because, like a Frank Gore, he knows how to run. He's born to run. He's not going to be winning guys with his track speed. He's going to be winning with his instincts. These super fast guys, they kind of got to almost learn to slow down, right? And not just when to use their speed, how to use their speed. It's not the same kind of look that a Frank Gore has. I'll give you an example. I mean, of course, Devin Achane, 3rd round pick. Now he's in the NFL, and way better runner than I think anyone expected. At least certainly I expected. He's averaging 8 yards carry in the National Football League. It's not like this guy was a Heisman Trophy winner in Texas A&M. Productive, but he wasn't dominant. Another example I want to give is, of course, CJ2K, the guy we just talked about. Probably the best fast running back where speed is like their number one thing by a mile to have success in the NFL. Yeah, of course, you had your Tony Dorsett's. O.J. Simpson was pretty fast. There's been fast backs in the NFL, but they had other stuff too. CJ2K was really the first kind of track star running back, at least of my lifetime, that people question whether he can get it done because of his size, and the speed was just overwhelming. Look at his stats when he was at East Carolina. His first 3 years, he never had more than 700 yards in a season. Never had more than 4.3 yards a carry. At East Carolina, bad competition. Senior year, it clicks, it slows down, 1,400 yards, 6 yards a carry, 17 touchdowns, goes to the NFL, and is great from day one. I'm not saying our Chris Johnson is going to go through the same trajectory, but it helps you understand how guys like this might develop differently. And if we're just comparing speed to speed, Chris Johnson, number 24 for the Miami Hurricanes, is faster than CJ2K from the Tennessee Titans that you saw running for all those 70-yard touchdowns in the NFL.
I mean, listen, I'm with you. I'm just excited to see how he gets incorporated into the offense, Steve, because of course Martinez is going to get, a good amount of the carries. Fletcher, when he gets back, will be a big part of it as well. And then we've, talked about AJ Allen. He's already been a guy who's shown what he can do. Chris Johnson, we'll see if they work him the ball in some different ways, right? Jet sweeps, misdirection stuff. So that's what I'm interested to see.
Yeah. Another way you can get him the ball is wheel routes, right? I don't think he's a receiver like a Chris McCaffrey or a Marshall Faulk, or even a Duke Johnson, where they really can run routes. I mean, these guys are sharp. They know what they're doing. They're super aware. They're like receivers if they wanted to be. I don't think he's that kind of receiver, at least not yet, but he can catch the ball. And when he's on a wheel route or something where he's just using his speed, nobody's going to catch him. If you know there's going to be no safety there, you can throw it as far as you want. He'll run under it. And most of the time he's going to catch it. We saw that happen multiple times in spring. So keep an eye on that with Chris Johnson. I think what he needs to work on. We talked about just some of the running back instinct stuff. He's missed holes. He's bounced too many runs outside. We'll see if he can make those adjustments like some of the other fast backs have done. I think also pass protection. We talked about with Damien Martinez and Fletcher, how they're stone walls in pass protection when they want to be. I think Johnson at 190 pounds, that's going to be a weakness for him is holding up. So it's just doing just enough in that area where he's not a total liability, and it's not a tell that he's going to be going out and running a route. You could trust him enough to pass block when needed, so that way the defense doesn't know that, he's for sure going to be out there running a route or carrying the ball. You have to at least get to that adequate level, and then he becomes so much more dangerous because, of course, he can go out there and run the ball or run a route, or he can run the ball on a handoff.
Next guy here, D, someone who was not here during spring practice, but some had him, and I believe it was On3, had him as the number 1 running back in the country out of high school. Locally here, St. Thomas Aquinas. Jordan Lyle, you have had some good reports on him as well on the show. As you see this picture here that Gabby Urrutia tweeted out, and I mean, Gabby said it here. He said physically looks ready for the college level, and that's what you've said in some of the previous shows as well.
Yeah, Jordan Lyle's got a lot of airtime on the CanesInSight podcast, almost as much as Elijah Lofton, we'll talk about in a second. Lyle, when I saw him as a junior, he was committed to Ohio State. Good player. As I said, this is a good player. He's going to run for yards in college. I don't see overwhelming physical tools, that scream NFL. I think this guy looks like a good player, solid St. Thomas back. I could see why Ohio State wants him, but I don't know if he's going to be a superstar there. That was my take on him as a junior. Senior year, he looks bigger and he's dominating. I mean, making unbelievable plays week after week. And you say, wow, okay, now I can see why Ohio State wants him so bad. And he might be a major problem there. Miami turns up the heat. Not that they weren't recruiting him before, but they really, really prioritized this guy. Were able to bring him in. And they were excited about him. Everybody was excited about him. And they had a similar kind of process where he kept showing that he had more to him. When I saw him in spring, just walking around, he was not an early graduate. St. Thomas doesn't do that. So he gets there in spring as far as just as a spectator. Seeing him talking to Cristobal, I'm like, man, this guy is bigger than I thought. This guy looks like a franchise back, size-wise. I didn't expect that. Then he starts working out and enrolls. And every single time I've talked to somebody around the program, coach, player, hey, who's looking good in the workouts? Jordan Lyle's name's either the first name or the second name every single time. The attitude, the twitch, just a very, very impressive football player. He's coming from a program that produces great backs, reliable backs, guys that know how to play the game, guys that end up going to the NFL. I think that James White, a totally unheralded back from St. Thomas Aquinas, that ended up being a Super Bowl hero with Tom Brady because he knew how to play the game. That's what St. Thomas produces. This guy's like that, but he's got more running talent. On three, when they made him the number one running back in the country, raised a lot of eyebrows. I kind of raised an eyebrow too when they did it. Seeing him walking around, seeing his senior film, and then hearing what I'm hearing now, I can see it. I would not be surprised if this guy made a Mark Fletcher type impact year one. Fletcher also did not graduate early. His school didn't allow it, but he came from a very heralded program, came prepared, came physically ready, came with some versatility. I can see Jordan Lyle coming in and making a similar impact to Mark Fletcher as a true freshman.
Yeah, and I think the good thing with him and his ability to come in right away and make an impact, much like Fletcher, right, is that he's a complete back. He's not, no slight to Chris Johnson, but you really had to scheme him the ball last year if he was going to, be a part of the offense. I think with Lyle, he can come in, whether it's out of the backfield as a pass catcher, whether it's, they need someone as a pass blocker, right? You can trust him, I believe. And I don't, not again, no slight to any of the other guys, but at running back, yes, it is a plug and play position for the most part, but there's less, like, you can kind of just throw him in there. There's less game planning, I believe, that will need to go around him, getting him, the ball and getting him in the game. Yeah,
I think this guy's instant coffee. You see it on the film. Balance, ability to withstand contact. So contact balance, basically, short area quickness and footwork and burst, vision. And really, I mean, he dances when he needs to. You see the spin moves and some of the jukes, but it's efficient. He's not out there to put on an Instagram highlight reel. He's there to get north and south when he can. There you see him right there again. Strong upfield move. He makes that guy fall right there. Does a spin move there, but it's all functional. This is somebody who is there to do the job. A very natural running back, very tough player as well. Here you see the pass catching ability. It's all right. So he has that to him. He's a hands catcher, similar to Fletcher. So I think this is a guy who, if he's your, there's going to be injuries at this position. That's just the nature of the beast, whether it's Martinez, hopefully none of these guys get hurt, whether it's Martinez, Fletcher is currently injured. We'll see with Allen. We're going to talk about Elijah Lofton. There's a lot of unknowns. A guy like Elijah Lofton might play more tight end. Who knows? If Jordan Lyle's the number 2 back on this team, or even if he's starting games this year, God forbid an injury happens to Martinez, it would not shock me. Again, Mark Fletcher last year, to me, would be my comp, not in terms of the running style, but in terms of the impact year one.
All right, Dean, what a luxury for Miami. We've talked about 5 running backs here. Obviously, Martinez wasn't here during the spring. Fletcher dealing with his injury. But we've talked about 5 backs, and we have not talked about Elijah Lofton. You've mentioned him, but he was the guy who was probably Miami's best running back here during spring practice, and he was an early enrollee. So talk about the wild card of Lofton and what he could bring to this backfield.
Yeah, look, I love the CanesInSight message board, 6.9 million posts and counting. And one of the best things about the debate. So Elijah Lofton was a very controversial player because 6'1", 240 tight end. It didn't make sense measurement wise. And I was a very vocal supporter of Elijah Lofton. I think we said on this podcast, he was my favorite player in the class. And the reason is the versatility and all of the things he can do. And you say, okay, he's 6'1", 240. He's undersized for an inline tight end. But you see here running into a stack box against Central and just completely grown manning everybody, spinning off tackles, dragging guys. When he's at running back and he's 240 and tough, he's huge. When he's at fullback, he's the perfect size. When he's lined up wide, he's way bigger than any defensive back he's gonna go against. So it's just about the role he plays. He came here early, and the first couple weeks, he was only playing tight end. So he was only running. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of running back, but he was really out there running routes in the one-on-one portion against defensive backs, cooking them, making one-handed catches, unbelievable route running. And he was the talk of the camp as that position, as a route runner and as a receiver, with the one-handed catches, with the production. He also made some nice blocks as an H-back, as a tight end. He hadn't even started running the ball yet. Some running back injuries happen. He now shifts into the running back room and sort of grabs the hold of that position and starts making plays. The second scrimmage, which I was in attendance for, full contact, taking backs to the ground, full tackling. This guy was the best player on the field. I'm including Cam Ward in that scrimmage. And anyone that was there will tell you the same thing. He had they don't keep stats. I think he probably had almost 200 yards running. When you look at all of all the different drills and all the different live drills, he had multiple touchdowns, long runs. He's kind of like Edgar and James. I'm not saying he's that good, but his running style, he's very patient, knows how to kind of play off these offensive linemen and let them get to their spots before really putting on the one efficient cut and exploding. So he's not just like a bull in the china shop. He really sets people up. He knows how to run the ball. He also has spin moves with some finesse to him. But at the end of the day, 240 pounds, with a stiff arm. He can play running back for you year one. Great blocker. We talked about everything we said about Martinez and Fletcher. You can add for Lofton. He's that same size. He's going to punish people, especially as a change of pace for one of those two guys. He's going to protect. And the added dimension with Lofton is he is not just a capable receiver for a running back. He is a legitimate receiver that can beat defensive backs with only his receiving ability. Forget linebackers. He can beat defensive backs off his routes. He did that all spring whenever he was put in the one-on-one drills, which is tight ends, receivers, and defensive backs. He was cooking people consistently, guys to play. So with him, let's say you put him as a fullback or as a single back in let's say the 10-yard line, 5-yard line. If he's there with another running back, you don't know if he's going to be blocking. You don't know if he's going to line up wide. You don't know if he's going to carry. If he's by himself, you don't know if he's going to carry. You don't know if he's going to line up wide. You don't know if he's just going to pass protect. He can do so many things that really allows you to get a matchup no matter who's on the field. Because if there's a light box, he's either blocking for a running back. If he's the only running back, he's going to run with power as a 240-pounder. If people are heavy and they're bringing in their big linebackers to stop the run, just line up wide and try to cover him with the linebacker. It's not going to happen. So his versatility, his IQ, year one, to me, makes him one of the absolute best players on the team. He hasn't played a snap yet, so I'm getting way ahead of myself. But listen, when they asked Cristobal for a comparison, he didn't say, some role player. He said Ruben Bain, Francis Malinois. Those were his comparisons for Elijah Lofton in terms of impact. Those two were two of the best players in the ACC year one. Lofton, if he continues to do what he did in spring, he will be one of the best players, certainly on this team and possibly in the conference, if all he does is just replicate what he did in spring practice against the first-team defense.
And we'll be talking about him again here in a few days as we get to the tight ends group as well. So a guy that all Canes fans I know are excited about, and we got a nice glimpse of him in the spring. But one more guy here, another freshman, another player who was here in January, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, goes by Hellcat. Guy with a lot of explosive ability. One of these guys that you really are a fan of because he's played both sides of the ball as well, and local talent from Deerfield Beach. So what are the chances he, number one, gets in the mix this year, but number two is a guy that could be a potential impact player here for Miami down the line?
Yeah, I say redshirt year one just because of the size. He's trying to get in that. He's trying hard to get to that 180 range, and he's not there yet. Not really in striking distance. I don't think these things change. We're talking about 18-year-old guys and their growth, but I haven't seen him yet. But weight's going to be the thing with him. However, as a player, he's not Duke Johnson. Okay. Duke Johnson was special in terms of his stiff arm and some of the stuff he could do at the college level. Actually, pretty similar explosiveness in the high school level. I mean, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey averaged about 16 yards a carry without an offensive line of note. So, pretty talented player. I think jumping up a level, the strength is not there like it was for Duke. Duke played bigger than his size, which allowed him to be all-time leading rusher in Miami. I don't think that upside there is there for Wheatley-Humphrey. However, the way he runs reminds me of Duke. Just the ability to jump cut from gap to gap, really multiple gaps with one jump cut. The vision, just the foot twitch and explosiveness. Look at these little tight moves that he makes. I mean, look at that. I mean, he makes spectacular moves, but without covering too much ground and being inefficient. He's very efficient with his cuts, just jumping and being, upfield, being a true running back on top of being a dynamic playmaker. I see a lot of that Duke Johnson style with Wheatley-Humphrey. Again, I'm not saying I don't think the upside's the same, but that's what I see. The stiff arm and the strength is probably the separator for Duke. And I'll say this about Wheatley-Humphrey. Look, I think from what I saw in spring, he's also very tough for his size. I think if he continues to grow and gain weight, I think he could definitely play at Miami. They're going to be recruiting big names, big size guys that are top 10 players in the country, their position. Gerard Pringle from Arwood, top 10 player in the country, top 10 running back in the country, according to the 247 composites. So there's going to be a lot of people coming for Wheatley-Humphrey's spot that maybe have more size, but I think he can play in Miami. And if he doesn't play here, I think he'll play somewhere else but right now we're glad to have him here. And I think year one, probably not going to play, but year two, he has a chance. He can do some really exciting things with the ball in his hands.
Really nice running backs group here, D. Again, we talked about it with the quarterbacks yesterday. It's nicely layered. Obviously, they're going to be adding some young guys in this upcoming recruiting class with Pringle, but another class here where you have Damien Martinez. You expect him, again, if everything goes as planned this year, I would expect him to be 1 and out. And then you have some guys obviously behind him for the next few years here as well. So really exciting group as a whole. And best part about it is they'll be running behind that big offensive line that is only going to keep getting better, I believe, here under Coach Cristobal and Mirabal. But remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. We're going to continue these positional previews here over the next week or so. And then, of course, as any news breaks heading into fall camp here, we got ACC Media Days coming up here as well, D. So we'll have you covered with that. Any interesting, sound bites and tidbits that come out of there, I'm sure we will discuss that. But like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out CanesInsight.com. Go Canes.
Shop at Caneswear, the spot where Miami Hurricanes fans shop, and Caneswear.com if you're out of state. And keep tuning in, man. This is a football season. Sign up, CanesInsight.com. Keep clicking the forum. Like and subscribe here. We're giving it to you every single day. And it's going to be a fun ride, man. So shop at Caneswear. Sign up for Canes Insight. Go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like Canes Insight. 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 It's Canes Insight.